Today I want to tell about my experience with Kotlin Compose Multiplatform, and I want to tell about some kind of my experience, how we work on the production project with Compose Multiplatform, and why in this in one way journey. Okay, first some words about me. My name is Yauheni. I'm from Belarus. I live in here around 3 years. As a developer, Android, I started around 9 years ago. During this time, I work in several consulting company, and this it's take a lot of experience when you work from small project, big project, with small teams, with large teams. They involve 200 Android developers just develop on one single mobile application. Yeah, it's very nice way to get a real experience. And in current moment, I am working Umain, and as you heard before, I work it in McDonald's project. It's very nice experience. I very like to talk about development. If you want to reach me, to scan QR code, you can to connect to me in LinkedIn and continue talk and just to ask question if you have. My personal opinion about development you can find on my website. And just to share my thoughts about development, AI stuff, and all related thing. Okay, let's go to project. And first of all, I start this story about some, I think, a very classical situation in consulting company when customer come to consulting company and ask about, I want application. And this is happened around 2 years ago when Northway, a railway company, just want to expand to presence and replace some kind of old stuff with SMS on more modern way with push notification on mobile devices for people who commute and who use the train to travel from one city to another. And yeah, and they just ask for us to build application to both platform. And as regular, first question when we have this kind of request, what tech stack we will use, and what platform, what solution we use for build application. The simplest way, you can build two native application. But this is has some big problem and big issue for consulting company. If you want to build two native application, you have two native developers. You should be implement some stuff twice. In this case, it's a cross-platform solution. It's silver bullet for this. When you possibly to write something once and run in multi-platform. In this case, we have the option to React Native, Flutter, and KMP, Kotlin Multiplatform, and we have expertise in we had expertise in all solutions, but we decided move to KMP because it's more, for our opinion, it's more flexible, more modern, and well developed. But another approaches is work too. What is to basic idea KMM and KMP? It's just the same terms, but it's more it's just same terms, but I possibly use KMM or KMP. It's the same thing. Why is KMP? It's very flexible and it's allowed for you use to share it to part of your application in different level. You possibly to use some only, for example, some small module when you can share it for both platform, or you want to handle the whole business logic, what not required to native platform for both platform. For example, you possibly to fetch, store data, make some kind of to business calculation in to share it parts. It will be written only once and use on iOS and Android platform or web if you need. Or even you possibly to write the whole application and whole UI in this Kotlin multiplatform too. And also, it's very flexible and depend on your requests, to standards, and other stuff. In other words, it's all depend on your project. In our case, we decided to use the middle plan when strategy when we have shared business logic and native UI. For Kotlin for Kotlin we use the Compose. For Swift, for iOS we use the Swift UI. Why we use this? Because in this time Compose Multiplatform was not stable for iOS platform. It was in alpha, and this was one of the reasons why we decided to keep native UI. In this case, we need to, in our team, iOS developers too. And some timeline of the project, we start in February 2024. We have the teams in around 5 person, 2 Android developer, 1 iOS developer, project manager, and 2 designer. Almost after half of the year, our project was done. Its main development was done, and in this case, we to develop all screens. We to connect to backend, and all is work. And after this, start kind of support process. And I think if you work in consulting company, you know this situation when project is done, but company still to support this project for half a year, 2 years, or maybe for next feature. And this time we didn't have resources to support the project. And very often it's just part of developer do this, or even 25% of developer, not the whole time. In other words, in this case, it's very critical. You cannot to keep iOS and Android developer in the same time. And this is main problem and main benefit of cross-platform solution, when you possibly have only one developer would cover the all stuff. And in May in 2025, and Compose Multiplatform moved to stable for iOS and in production ready. And from this moment, we start thinking about migration. And at the end of the year, we just start this process of migration to Compose Multiplatform. And we start to move from native UI to some shared UI. And I want to show why is the main reason and why we move this. First of all, when we use this approach, we have UI stuff on both platform, and very often people tell it's this is more preferable because you create some kind of native experience for iOS developers, iOS users, or Android users. But most of the times when you develop application for both platform, very often you have just one design, and you to make this design for both platform. And how it's look in our application, and this is how it's look for Android, and this is how it's look for iOS. We try to use the same Figma file with the same design. We don't have two separate design for Android and iOS. And you see it's some slightly different UI. But it's not pixel perfect with Figma, but it's slightly different because different platform, different developer implement this, and they write the different code in different languages. In result of this, we have slightly different UI, and the code written twice. And I think it's maybe it's great a native experience, but it's some kind of overhead when you don't have resources. How we end up, we start use to shared UI or unify UI when you write UI only once and show this UI for on both platform, and Compose Multiplatform help for this. And now you can see one of the example of the screen, what written on Compose, but present on both platform in the same time. And now you see the screen is almost the same by design, how icons look, only slightly different. The size of elements is different because I think it's how slightly different how calculate the size of the components for iOS and Android, and result of the resolution maybe too, because we use here some simulator on real devices may be slightly different. It's the main difference. In other words, it's now designs look like to more similar, and in this case we just use only one written Compose and display on both platform, and you cannot like to see some kind of platform-specific elements here. Okay, in other words, it's the main like two problems. It's you have duplication UI logic twice, and in this case you have some kind of like two problems when, for example, this is happen when it's our project moved to support and we have only resources of one developer. And this one developer, for example, should be create some kind of notification elements what present in the top on both platform for Android and for iOS. And this is like to view pager, what a possible slide, but some tricky moment with this element, this block should be like to resize depending on the content. For Android, I solved this problem, but for iOS, I don't find the, like I spent like several days just try to find this, but I didn't find like proper solution for this. And result of this, iOS looks slightly weird. But if you, in other words, in this case, it's some like a very nice example when I implement both elements. I spent like for one platform like 3 days, for another like 5 days, and result of this we have like two different components. But in Compose Compose Multiplatform, you possible like to implement only Android side properly, and after they will display almost the same for iOS without any problems. And you see behavior the elements is different too because it's native components. But now it's how it will be look after when we run Compose Multiplatform on both platforms. Now elements it's look almost the same, just like the size slightly different, but visual it's almost the same, and you don't need to spend like 5 days to implement this like it's a very strange elements on iOS side. It's how Android developer make iOS components. Okay, and another it's like I think the main like problems and like main benefits like cross-platform solution and Compose Multiplatform. Okay, now we're slightly back, and it's just example how we work and what approach if you have like if you have application what written in Compose in Kotlin multiplatform and you want to move to Compose Multiplatform. In this case, we have two approaches. First, it's like to make all like changes all at once. In other words, you possibly try to migrate the whole to Compose Multiplatform. And in this case, we have a lot of like changes, a lot of like file changes, and a lot of commits. And result of this, we have some like half-ready project. We need to find some problems. We need proper tests. And after this, when one developer almost done this, we decide, okay, maybe we slightly move like more slowly, but step by step, and not like to create some kind of radical changes. And also, we choose another like to approach step by step, screen by screen, because we can see how process goes, how we can like to just replace one screen and see how like it's look in the whole flow. In this case, you just see like some Git history, how I change like to different like to screen, spend some almost the same like to commits, but apply for different like to screen. And this is like more natural, and I think it's like a more organical way to migrate if you have like more huge application than than our, because we have not a lot of like screens. But if you have many screens, I think it's like one of the right way how you possibly migrate, and you don't need to migrate all at once. You possibly do by step and complete it during the 1 year. Some words about architecture, and during this time, when we have Compose Multiplatform project, we have like two application, native Android, native iOS models, and we have like shared models where all like business logic located, like to fetch data, database, all use cases, repositories, and all and other stuff what not related to UI. After change, we not introduce a lot of like new models. We just add one additional like to shared app models. It's like the top where all our coin dependency located. We use the coin because it's some simple way to use for cross-platform development. And also we introduced shared UI models where we extracted all our UI elements and screens. And one of the benefits of this approach, because we implemented Android stuff before, almost all our screens now is ready to migrate. We just like to take screens from Compose application and move this in shared UI, and just like to fix some issues with import, with like to view models, and all in other stuff. In result of this, migration, it's not like to write new screens. It's just like to move Android stuff in shared UI, and result of this, Android stuff display on the iOS. It's some kind of expansion of like to Android to iOS, but and for new screens, you possibly just like to write, like to compose, start from in shared UI. Okay, and it's all look like very simple, but we have some kind of like tricky moments, and I think one of the problems is like to navigation in application, and I think it's like one of the big problems not only for cross-platform application but for native. And here I like to remember the joke when every Android developer should be write their own navigation library, and I didn't like to write library yet, but I just like to try to combine several approaches in one. How we decide and how we solve these problems? Because we migrate some screen by screen, we have some situation when we need to have some shared navigation, and we need to still use like native navigations. In this case, we combine like these two approaches. We introduce app navigating Kotlin interface what located in shared model, and we possible like to call this interface from platforms solution from platform and open the screens what we need. In this case, in this approach, it's very like flexible, and we have the flow when we open like to native screen, after move to shared screen, after from this shared screen move back to native. In other words, these changes in this navigation happen like smoothly, but it was tricky in the first step, and you should be like to proper setup like to all configuration, and not possible like to do from like to I don't know easily just like to run some commands or something. You should be like to spend some time for proper design how navigation should be work. In this case, I just want to share another like video. Here it's show how we navigate in different screen. In middle of this navigation, we have like some shared elements. What use like to shared navigation logic, and after back to native navigation logic. For example, this screen is like to shared compose. They look same and navigate like to smoothly without any problems. After when we press the train, we move back to like to native UI elements. In other words, it's like to navigation between like two components, it's work very smoothly. And it's some kind of like to not good way to have different variant of navigation at the same time, but it's like to some trade-off of migration. And when you fully complete your application to Compose Multiplatform, in this moment you should be fully like to remove native navigation elements. But now when you in middle you have like combination of both. Okay, and this like was like main problems. I just show some words about like migration routine. And when you use the step-by-step like approach, you just take the one screen. Very often this one screen is isolated in some folders, and just like to move this like to Android Compose to shared like to library, and after just check how correctly this it's look on iOS site after migration. In other words, in some screens you don't need to even like to add new elements, and you can see how its middle is as look in before like some native elements, and after we have like to on both platforms when you use a shared compose like to elements. We can see some slightly difference in like to in fonts, and also we present like to this white background in Android not present. It's because I not like to fully adjust how apply the theme for the whole iOS application, but it was because some we not like to migrate the like to root application, and you just like to temporal like to differences, but in the end it should be like to fix it. Okay, and in this it's the same. And how elements it's look like before. You can see the different dialogues, different design for both platform, but after like migration in both platform, it's look almost the same. Same like to dialogues, and same like to behavior for elements. Okay, and another word, when we have like to this like to routine, you possibly like to just change one screen by another screen, because it's I done this I did this like almost like 1 year ago, when we not use the AI very like too often. I think now you possible even automate some steps. You can possibly like to create some skills or like to some commands what try to do this step like to more faster with AI. And as well, before I spent like to maybe 1 or 2 days to move one screen because I need to proper test. But now you possibly like to spend maybe some half of the day just like to proper migrate. In other words, it's a good point for automation with AI, and I think migration should be look more simple even now. Okay, and also it's another pain what I reach during the migration. It's some missing resource exception what I get, especially when I try to first time run migrated screen on iOS site. I found some icons not like to display, and application crash on the start. I spent around like to some 1 or 2 days to just figure out where the problem is, and I found like an open issue in JetBrains, and this issue is still open here for current moment. And also like the developer from JetBrains just suggest solutions, and solution is pretty simple. It's a problem in when we compile like to library and framework for iOS site. We not like to proper copy the icons, fonts, and all and other stuff in the right places, and they just decided and suggest like to copy files from Compose resources folder to Compose dash resources, and after this it's work. And in this it show like to maybe some pain, some tricky moment for cross-platform solution. Very often for some very specific moments you need to write the own script, and and very often it's not only one script. It's possible like 2, 3, 5 scripts just like for build some specific library for iOS or for Android. And scripts, it's not like very stable. It's like fragile components, and it's possible broken. And someone should be maintaining this. And I think it's one of the like problem any cross-platform, not any, maybe Flutter not so like problem, but for Kotlin multi-platform, I think this problem is correctly set up, configured the project. And yeah, but to be honest, JetBrains work in this direction very well. If you compare cross Kotlin multi-platform like 3 or 5 years ago, and now it's very different, and we have a lot of improvements in this direction, but still we have some kind of like problems like this when we need to copy like one folder to another because it's not supported right name for the folder. Okay, and it's time for conclusion. After like several iteration, for current moment we like to migrate some several screens, and this process is like to continue. And what is the like main benefits? It's you possible like to write the code only once and not fix it every time for both platform. You don't need two developers to do this stuff. You possible only one Android developer would handle like UI for both platform, or iOS developer should be do this, but he should be like slightly learn before. And also now it's stable, it's available for production and production ready. And if you want to like to share this approach for like to your like to project manager, just like to suggest, okay, maybe we try to do this for one screen, check how it's work. If you work perfectly, and you possibly like to use this approach. And yeah, I like the Compose Multiplatform solution for UI, and in case of like to AI like to progress, I think it's one of the like best and good solution for develop for many platforms in the same time. You don't need to care about like platform specific. It's depend on the project, but if your project not big, not like too complicated, not use like some hardware on platform specific stuff, use Compose Multiplatform in fully production ready, and yeah, and simple sometimes. Okay, it's all for today. We have